What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Beyond the Beret. I got a good friend of mine here today, Ronnie Blackburn from 3rd Special Forces Group. I wanted to bring him on the show so you can hear his story, and hopefully his story will inspire somebody out there, right? With all that said, Ronnie, welcome to the show, brother. If you want to give the folks a quick synopsis of who you are and where you come from, that'd be great, and then we'll jump right into it.
All right. Hey, thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah.
Super excited for you guys all that are getting out, kind of doing this kind of stuff, helping out the next generation, man. Anytime that somebody's willing to like put themselves and their time out there, you know, that's, you know, how valuable our time and stuff is. So it's good to be a part of anything like that. So I appreciate you having me on.
Of course.
Yeah, man, I'm pretty simple dude. I've been here at Fort Bragg for 16 years now.
Yeah.
Didn't really have a lot of traveling. So yeah, man, I'm currently like I'm in the process of medically retiring. I had a few injuries throughout the years that kind of like lingered on for a long time. I finally got neck surgery last year, and it kind of like rolled one into another, knee surgery, shoulder surgery. So I'm like right on the exit of getting out. You know, doing a lot of stuff with the 501c3 led nonprofit organizations in the area, trying to figure out what my next step is. Looking like probably like 6 to 8 months, and I'll be, you know, like Mr. or Coach Blackburn. You know, so
with how many years total? What,
21? I'll be just under 22 by the time I get out.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's amazing, man. Because I think I punched out at 20. Because I was like, not going a day past 20. It's just different because there's nothing going on.
I was with you, man. I was ready to. I was ready. I was on the same pathway as you. You know, you and I have been close, you know, over the past decade, and we got to that point in our career when you and I were back and forth a lot at that time. And I was like, I'm ready to roll. But then the opportunity became available to where it was a better option for me with the way the promotion system works and things like that, because I had just gotten selected for Sergeant Major. So if you do go or you don't go to Sergeant Major's Academy, puts a timeline on your ass. So it was the better option for me to explore the medical retirement aspect, especially with just, you know, pending that neck surgery and things like that. So it was an easy. Otherwise, I would have been out like right away at, you know, like right around 22. So it would have right around 20 also, not 22, but yeah, man.
Yeah, so let's start talking about your careers, man, and trying to figure out exactly what led to all these fucking surgeries. So where did it all start for you, man? Like, where'd you grow up? How's upbringing and all that good stuff?
So I'm from a pretty small town in Northwest Ohio called Clyde. It's a small factory farm town, you know. Whirlpool Corporation's there. My dad works there still today. My mom owns her own salon and spa, which where my sister works. It's very small, very tight community. Not very much. I had an uncle that was in the Army, you know, for maybe like 6 years, I think. Served in Desert Storm and stuff, but we weren't around any military. Camp Perry, which there's a sniper competition there. You've probably heard about that. Other than that, man, there ain't shit military around us. So it wasn't like it was something that was even an option really for us. But, you know, in the absence of options, sometimes options become available, right? You know, so like there was a lot of things that I tried doing after high school. Mainly, you know, like I was a competitive wrestler, and school was not my thing. So wrestling in college just wasn't really that thing. I had a really good life, you know, growing up. My parents, you know, my parents are still married. My brother and sister, I'm really close with them. My little brother's in the Army too. He just made Master Sergeant.
Really?
Yeah, he's in 11
Holy
Charlie.
Shit, man! When did that happen? I didn't know. So
he hasn't
was he in the entire time?
He's been in for 15 years.
Oh, he's fast tracking.
15 or 16 years. Yeah, he's an 11 series dude. Him and I's careers have been very different, you know, other than like Airborne and Ranger and Air Assault and Pathfinder, like the schools that we kind of think about the same. But he's been, you know, like Campbell, Drum, all the areas where you have, you know, light infantry, whether it be mountain or whatever. He's been, you know, he's made the trip. He's been a drill sergeant, you know, he's had an awesome, you know, regular Army career. Super successful kid or guy. He's my little brother. I forget about that all the time. You know,
he'll always be a kid.
He's a grown ass man now. And he's like, but man, he lives 3.2 miles from me right now.
Oh, nice.
So like,
that's amazing.
Always been super close with my family. Which is what made joining the military so hard at the beginning. Especially at the beginning. I mean, not that it's you being, your family, you have a big family as well, and throughout the years, it doesn't get easier. You think it's easier to say bye. If anything, it kind of gets harder. You're like, fuck, man. Yeah. I know, like there towards the end, it was like, all right, man, this is the last one. Until the next one. But, so yeah, man, I came from a pretty steady home. My dad was my wrestling coach from the time I was 5 years old. Nice. All the way till I left. Mom's super loving. My mom's Mexican, and my dad's a white dude from Kentucky. So you always around, I'm a Mexibilly.
The first time I heard you say that term, I was like, what? What is that even?
It's pretty funny. And it's kind of funny because they carry those characters in them. My mom is just like super loving, caring, generous, like what you would expect out of abuela, the Mexican mother. She's just like always like, are you hungry, mijo? And my dad's just real quiet, just sitting there, just about business. He's like, and he's funny as hell, but he's more of his like undertone, like he's not the look at me kind of guy. And both of them are really small, people too, which is funny. Like all of our family pictures, my brothers and sisters are like, really, big. No, very short, very small people. My mom and dad are very small. And I'm standing there like looking like a Triple H super out of place. Super out of place. And but yeah, man, really good family life. That's one thing that like wrestling wasn't going to work out for me in college. It was just my grades, honestly, for the sake of transparency, just my discipline and sense of responsibility before I joined the military was just nowhere to be close. I didn't have a relationship with God. I didn't have really like anything. I had all these facades, but nothing was like, in. I remember one year, my now mother-in-law, the year I got out of high school or the next year, because I didn't join the Army until 2.5 years after high school. I think it was the year after high school or the following year, in between going to college and coming back and, half-ass training for, a sport that you have to be all in on and things like that. I think I turned in, I think it was like 9 or 11 W-2s one year for taxes. Because like I just had the attitude and I still have this to a degree. You've known me for a long time. Like I walk into work and if you tell me something I don't like, I'm like, all right, well, you do it then. And I'm out, and that's the way that I did it. So I needed some stability in my life. And the Army wrestling coach, Sean Lewis, pursued guys because you can directly join the Army, and then the process to get into the All Army Wrestling Team, and then the World Class Athlete Program, and then the Army is fantastic with it. At the time, they had an All Armed Forces game, but they didn't have year-round competition like the Army did. So like the All Marines, the All Air Force, the All Navy kind of thing. So All Army had a thing, and it was kind of like it was first brought up, and we were like, hell no, I'm not joining the Army, Like,
now, was that a conversation you had with your parents, or was that a decision that you was like, no, I'm good? And what led you to answer it in that manner? Was it like, nah?
It was just my lifestyle, man. Like, like if I didn't know anything about, like I said, I didn't grow up around the military, so I didn't know anything. And from the outside, the perspective of it is, especially the be all you can be Army, where you got these dudes running across, like doing stuff, and then you like watch, a video, because social media wasn't a thing then either. We're talking, right before 2001, 2002 time frame. So social media and things were just starting, and your access to that stuff was very little. So what you did know was like, man, there was one dude in my town that I do remember, and he was an Army Ranger, and he had like, he didn't have a bunch of tattoos like we all do now, like all the dudes are covered in tattoos everywhere, but like he had one right here, and it was the Ranger dagger, and he was a Ranger, when he came back, and he worked on the trash route. It was this big old, at that time to me, he was like big bald-headed white dude, just jacked, in the way he just looked at everybody. And I don't really know, like, I'm sure he did some shit, because the Ranger Battalion has always done shit. I don't know what he's done. He's still friends with my dad. Like, he sees him like every Thursday, now. But at the time, that dude was like, damn, that dude's like, he's glazed over, he's got the, like,
he's seen some stuff.
You know what I mean? And we were just it's just such a small, and it's not in a bad way, but a sheltered, like, you just don't, nowadays it's bigger because you have social media and all these other things. Then you just know, like, man, let's go bust up some mailboxes or cow tipping and drink beers in the bull pasture and things like that. Yeah. So it was just so intense. And like I said, I didn't have discipline, so I wasn't willing to like have somebody tell me where to be, when to be, how to be, and why to be. You know, like almost, very rebellious at that young age, driving my motorcycle around, thinking like nobody gonna tell me shit kind of stuff. And so the Army, the Army just wasn't in my radar at all. But then some time progressed through, and I went and the recruiter was like, hey, I want you to do, a PT test or something along those lines. And if you do this PT test, and not to mention, money's tight now. It's a reality. So the dude's like, if you do this PT test, only 60% of the forces score above this score. And I went and did it, and I was like,
that's easy.
Man, what the hell? Y'all get paid for this? And I was like, explain to me some more about this, and he was like, this is what you would do. You would go and join, you would go to the basic and AIT, and then, your day-to-day is this, like you're scoring above. He's like, really, it's around shooting, which I've hunted my whole life and been around guns, and not to the extent that I am now, but like I was in the country kind of thing, which is funny because as special operations guys, we almost like want to steer away from those dudes now because they already freaking know how to shoot. They already know, all right, man, you hunted, so you can clear follow-on rooms and call shout-outs, right? And it's funny, but at the time, in my experience, I was like, I have experience with guns and things like that. So it started becoming a little bit more of a reality, and my now wife was my girlfriend at that time, and she'd always been really supportive of that kind of stuff, so I went and talked to my dad. My parents were they've always been like apprehensive but supportive, know. I remember my dad, I still have the letter, but he wrote me a letter because I joined for a 3-year, because that was what the minimum with the bonus and stuff, right? I think it was like 3 G's too or something, which I was like, but my dad wrote me a letter, and he was like, I got to give my guardian angel up for the next 3 years. Go be safe, because both fucking wars are jamming. You know what I mean? Like,
when was this?
The end of 2002, or like the end of 2001, 2002 was when all this process was going on. So then I ended up joining at the end of 2002.
Yeah. Okay. And so I was right in front of you because I joined in 2003. March 13th, 2003 was when I joined, so you should have been like right before me then. Yeah, well, so at the end, I think my actual enlistment date is I always remember this because the Buckeyes beat Miami in the national championship that night, so it was January 1st, 2003. Okay. So the whole process was going on towards the end of 2002. I gotcha.
But my actual BESD, that my basic
entry date.
My basic entry date. That's January 1st, 2003.
Okay, gotcha.
And which is still a little before, but very close.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was traveling down to basic training, and I'm a huge Buckeyes fan. Like we got held. I think we were in Washington D.C. and had to stay an extra night before we could travel on down to boot camp. Yeah. And had to stay in a hotel, and I got to watch the national championship game where the Buckeyes beat the Hurricanes. It was like this huge thing. One of my buddies that I wrestled with in high school was on the Buckeyes that year, so it was really cool. But it's easy for me to remember that date because of that.
Gotcha.
But yeah, man. So that's when I joined and left.
What MOS did you join?
I joined as a 91 Bravo, which now is a 68 Whiskey.
Okay, so
the year that I joined. So my enlistment was for that 91 series, and the year that I joined was the MedCom or AMED transition year, where they were like transitioning out with the combat medical and turning it to a medical specialist or something like that. I don't know. It wasn't called a combat medic anymore. Yeah.
So now, what made you choose that specific MOS?
The follow-on. So my full intentions were. So the Olympics were in 2004. My full intentions were to come in, pick an MOS that I could do outside, which you get your EMT basic as a medic. So I wanted to so basically the way that the program was set up is that you join the Army, you do basic training, you go to AIT, Then you go to your gaining unit, and then from your gaining unit, you go basically TDY immediately to Fort Carson and start wrestling. Gotcha. And then you stay, you know, like your career progresses. Like one of the things, you know, like I got credit for a 12-month tour in Korea, and you know I did like 90 days there. You know, like 45 on the front and 45 on the end, in processes and out processing. Gotcha. Because I was TDY in Colorado the whole time. Gotcha. On the wrestling team. Okay. So my intent was to wrestle for WCAP, and then fulfill my first 3-year enlistment. If the Olympics worked out in 2004, it did, and if it didn't, you know, then I only had 12 months left until I was out of the Army with perishable skill to go back home with and be able to move back to Clyde and be a fireman or a paramedic or whatever, you know. Gotcha. Probably not a police officer because that wasn't like my gig back then, but like, you know, anything to deal with like, you know, emergency medicine kind of stuff. I got you. That was the plan, you know, not a day more than 3 years.
Yeah, that shit changed.
And honestly, it changed pretty quick, you know. So I think I made it probably 3 weeks, man. Yeah. And you, as long as a lot of other, as well as everyone else that's known me for more than 5 days, knows that like I'm not a person that likes being by myself. I'm not a person, you know, like I'm not that guy that needs his alone time and things. I probably made it. I know I was still in reception when I picked up the payphone, and a lot of people don't know this. Carrie does, and if she ever watches this, she's gonna be like, I can't believe you actually admitted that. But like, I probably made it to reception, you know, and I was like, man, this is lonely as shit. I already been in fights with people, like arguments with like the drill sergeant coming up, you know. It's a very typical story that you feel like it happens so much, people got to make it up. But you just don't know why they're yelling at you, you know, and they're like, get down. You're like, hey, bro, chill out. Like,
I get down.
What are you talking about, bro? You know, it's like, I'm serious. Like, what? I'm not even, I'm in street clothes, you know, like, get off the CTA. I'm like, what the hell's a CTA? You know, I'm from fucking Clyde, Ohio, man. We got no CTAs up there. So, already feeling the grind and never, you know, like leaving home. Aside from wrestling, I never left home, but whenever I did leave home, my pops was always with me. Yeah. Like even, you know, the junior national wrestling tournaments out in Fargo, North Dakota. Yeah. My dad drives, dude, all the way to Fargo, North Dakota, and then I ride back, you know, all the way with him. So no matter where I went, you know, for the most part, my dad was always with me. That's awesome. So this was the first time in my life, you know, like
you're away from home.
For real though, you know, like without a
safety blanket,
without a RTB, you know, what I'm saying? I ain't got no timeline, bro. Yeah. So I picked up the phone one day and I called Carrie and I was like, hey, I want to marry you, you know, like let's get married. And that kind of changed, you know, and she was like, with two young, crazy, you know, kids. And we had been together because Carrie and I started dating when we was junior and senior in high school, you know, so like we'd been together for a while at that point.
That's a story within itself, dude. She survived all of it.
She's still around. She's still hanging in there, man. She's tough. Yeah. She's got all her limbs and everything. She's so I asked her to marry me on over the phone. Yeah. And
it's real romantic.
Like, you know, I'll get you a ring when I get home. Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of and I didn't think anything of it, you know, like, and that's still the way I am. You know, like now you would think that being, you know, in my 40s that I would like get some kind of like comprehension of life, you know, and I'll still be like, you know, I was on the phone with a friend the other day. And Carrie was sitting there and she had gotten upset about something. I don't remember, you know, kids going to college or something, you know, and I was like, are you crying? You know, like, I didn't mean it to come out that way, you know, but then my buddy on the phone was like, hey, are you serious? Like, that's how you ask? I was like, no, you're right. You know, I shouldn't have said it like that because I didn't mean to be. It's just like the way we are sometimes.
I think we're all like that, man, because I get, you know, backlash from that all the time because it comes off as being insensitive. Right. But we're not insensitive. Yeah. It's just how we're wired, you know what I mean?
100%. It's what made us good at our job, too. Your ability to shut that off and, like, to just be like, I don't really understand what you're going through. I want to have empathy. Because, you know, like, how many times were you in a situation where you seen those little kids and you gave them a blanket or you gave them food, you know? Like, I just terminated all your boys over here that needed it, but I'm not a monster. You know, like, so I do know how to, like, be empathetic and compassionate and things. I mean, like, you're a great dad.
Yeah.
You've been married for a long time. You know what I'm saying? Like, that doesn't take away. It's just we just don't know how to, like, we don't know how to display it very well, you know?
No, we don't.
And it was that way when I was younger, you know? So, like, I would love to say, I think that, you know, the military probably exacerbated that trait in me, but I was already had that protective layer going into the military. And that, like, inability to kind of show things. So that's probably what made me, you know, eventually, you know, become a successful operator downrange and things like that.
Gotcha.
But yeah, man, I got to basic and asked Carrie to marry me, which kind of changed everything, you know. So that, you know, the Army has a funny way of somebody that, you know, doesn't have security. Yeah. Now all of a sudden, hey, I'm gonna slip you this little bit of cash for a house, and this little bit of cash for some food. Yeah. All your payment, your checks are coming in on the first of every month. You know, your health care, and, you know, this is taken care of. And Carrie and I were like, I wouldn't say we were regimented, but we had a plan. Yeah. Like, from the jump, you know, like, I'm gonna get back from basic training. I'm gonna be wrestling and things. She came and visited me in Colorado. So she even came to Korea once. And Carrie hates flying, bro. Like, unknowingly hates flying. Like, when I fly with her, she's like sitting there, and I'm like, look, man,
it's gonna be all right.
And if it's not, we ain't gonna know about it. Like, let's be if it's not, we're good. Like, either way, this is, you know, the flight's gonna land. Either way, we're gonna be good or we're not. So there ain't no reason to waste the whole time there. But she said she flew, I think it's a 14 or 16 hour flight to Korea, and she said she didn't get out of her seat once. Yeah. I'm like, that's a show of love right there. Yeah. So, but we knew, you know, we were gonna, like, have kids right away. You know, we didn't want to be old. You know, we wanted to be able to enjoy our kids' life, which now Blake just graduated. He's going to play college football. That's awesome. Caden's just going into his junior year. He's you know, wild, ready to wrestle. You know, like, he's a good wrestler. So that kind of led into you know, the 3-year commitment. Right away kind of turned like, well, maybe I'll do 6. And then everybody around me at that time, both wars are blasting. Which is kind of what happened, you know, like, the back forward a little bit. I went and wrestled, and the Olympic trials came around, and what happens in an Olympic year, so you can wrestle all 3 years as long as you stay nationally ranked.
Now you're wrestling for the Army too.
For the Army, the World Class Athlete program. It's so, like, this year we had like 9 or 10 Greco-Roman dudes make the world team for the Army. Nice. I put in, when I was the first sergeant over at Spec, I put a couple guys through that. You know, one of them, freaking awesome. You know, 2-time silver medal NCAA. You know, runner up. Just a monster of a dude. Went out to first group, and I was like, hey, man, you don't have to be done wrestling. He came back on the circuit, you know, so he's stationed. He's an active duty Green Beret that's assigned to first group, TDY to WCAP, and actually lives at College Station in Penn State. Like, lives at and trains there year round at the Penn State.
I gotta wrap my head around all of this. So you get done with basic training, you get done with IT. Where was your first unit?
Go to Korea.
So Korea was your first unit.
Camp Humphreys, Korea.
But you were assigned to wrestle.
Yeah. So which was hilarious, right? Because this is, you've been in the, you know, like, everybody that I talk to, this is a very, like, unique, you know, we're used to that with the inside of the 1% of the 1% of the 1% kind of thing. Yeah. But this is even smaller, like, little community where essentially, if you can, the Army, the World Class Athlete program is designed so that if you're a talented Olympic sport athlete, then the Army will pay and train you to represent the Army as an advertising, I believe, but, like, whatever the motive behind it. So you get to I get to Camp Humphreys, and I still remember the look on my company commander's face, you know, a little private, you know, PFC Blackburn, brand new medic, you know, walking up into Seco, and I was like, you know, I need to see the commander, you know, and they're like, bitch,
go mow the lawn.
Yeah, what are you talking about, you know? And go in, and I remember the guy's name. I'll leave it out, but I was like, you know, hey, sir, I'm not sure how this works, you know, but I'm supposed to be getting ready to be on orders to the All Army Wrestling Program. And the 8th Army Wrestling Tournament was, like, coming up or something. he was like, what? He's like, you're in my company, so I tell you where you like go TDY and stuff. And I'm like, nah, that ain't, you know, like how this works. And he was like,
I don't think you understand.
I don't think you know how this works. So it was like a couple bumps and bruises, because honestly, I didn't know how it worked. You know, I was just told this, you know, from this guy. And a lot of the guys at the World Class Athlete program, they would get stationed at Fort Carson. Yeah. Like one guy in particular that I can think of, you know, like he was an MP there at Carson. And so his gaining unit, he would still stay there and train. Gotcha. You know, because he never ended up making an Olympics, but he spent his whole Army career, bro. 87, you know, successful Army career. Just wrestling. You know, and I think he's a coach there now. Yeah. You know, and his brother was a Marine. Nice. The coach, Sean Lewis, was an active duty Sergeant First Class forever as the wrestling coach. Oh, nice. So, however, at this time, like I went and had this conversation with the guy. Eventually, like got through, you know, like, all right, you're going to Carson. So I get to Carson and I'm doing wrestling, you know, it's just wrestling. Yeah. You don't, like, I didn't have my Class A's, which is what we were wearing at the time. I didn't have my BDUs. I didn't have like very little things. So you wake up in the morning and wrestle, break for lunch, afternoon you wrestle, afternoon, you know, travel to tournaments and things like that. Wrestled through until, you know, the Olympic training times. Olympic training time comes up, you don't make the primary or alternate, then you go to a gaining unit. Yeah. Which at that time, so it's like a one shot, one kill type deal. Like for me, it was. Yeah. For me, it was because I was stationed at Korea, which means my gaining unit had to be my returning unit. Gotcha. So I had to go back and clear Korea, and then because of both wars being blasted and me being a medic, I got scooped up because we were stop lost at that point. Gotcha. So like some guys, they were able to control better because they weren't in those high. I don't remember the name of the word, like you know, like those high demand MOSs. Yeah, okay, gotcha. So like they could keep them there at Carson. So I got sent back to Fort Humphreys to out process. What happened doing like the wrestling? Like what happened there? You trained for it. You went through it. Yeah, trained through it, went through it. I ended up losing the final tournament. I ended up losing to a guy that I had beaten several weeks prior to. Yeah. And to be honest, later on in life, if I could look back and reflect on that time, now that I know what it takes to like train and get to a different level, you know, things happen in our life for a reason. Yeah. I wasn't training as seriously, you know, like I was still drinking, you know, running around. You were still young. I was still being a 21-year-old, 22-year-old dude. And in reality, like if I could go back and add my discipline that I can now apply to training, that I know you have to get in. Yeah. You have to get this amount of sleep. You have to get and not only was the information out there, you know, like that's there today. You know, these guys that are training today, it's insane. Yeah. You know, the training programs and the, you know, availability to things, not only information, but their buildings and things, it's amazing. Yeah. Not making any excuse, because if that shit was there, I probably would have chose to go to the bar anyway. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That was just where I was. Back again to what I was saying before I joined, whereas like the rebellious kind of, you know, against the grain dude, you know, running around on my motorcycle kind of thing, led into probably not me reaching my full potential as a wrestler. Yeah. So I beat a guy a couple weeks later, took light at the next match, lost, you know, and ended up being the end of the Olympic trial, Olympic run. Yeah. The whole experience was awesome, man. Yeah. You know, like I got to meet a ton of really good dudes that I still talk to and, you know, keep in touch today. Like the famous, you know, story that I always tell, like especially my boys, is, have you ever seen, you know who Bobby Lashley is? Yeah. So he was talking about big black dude. Yeah. Big old black dude. These motherfuckers. Like I'm in Jordan with the boys, and it's pretty permissive down there. So we'll go out. Like there's this one bar that we always go to because it's right next to Cosadic where we were. And of course I'm in Jordan. Like I'm in the gym. Like I'm getting swole. Yeah. So I'm in there, you know, having a good time with the boys. And the bartenders, they're whispering. I'm like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? They're like, yeah, Bobby Lashley. That's you. I was like, you motherfuckers. That's funny. I said, just because I'm black, motherfucker? Yeah, I know. Right? Like, what the fuck? They was like, no, you're big. I was like, all right. That dude was next level big. You ever seen that motherfucker? Oh, yeah. Well, he was in the Army.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he was on WCAP.
Oh, okay.
So he blew his knee out at Worlds in
Yeah.
2002 or 2003.
Yeah.
And we were off to a wrestling tournament or something, you
Yeah.
know, like I don't remember all the details, you know, so this is foggy. I hope I don't get like, you know, Vince McMahon sees your shit. He's like, that ain't how it happened. But so we come back and Bobby's driving a brand new Escalade.
Yeah.
And we're like, Bobby's a staff sergeant.
Yeah.
You know, back then deployment money and stuff
Yeah.
like that didn't work like that. And an Escalade was a big deal.
Yeah.
So then Bobby comes out and he's like, yeah, he just signed his first WWF contract.
Oh, nice.
And got a change of lifestyle chapter out of the Army. And went and ever since, I mean, the rest is history. He's still doing that shit nowadays.
Oh,
but he was on WCAT, man.
Oh, that's
Him and Jamil Byers and a bunch of dudes like that used to wrestle, you know, like day to day. It was pretty crazy. That's like my, you know, I know that dude. He's on the wrestling team. People are like,
that's awesome. I had no idea he was in the military.
Yeah, man, it is crazy to think about that. A lot of those dudes, you know, like I said, the WCAT program is freaking phenomenal for that. Yeah. Some guys join like guard and stay guard or active reserve or whatever, you know. But along those lines, you know, like those dudes were able to, not Bobby so much, but like the other guys had those MOSs that were able to stay there. So I went and I wrestled. Like I said, you know, like I can't say that I left my best, you know, impression. I met a lot of dudes, you know, surprisingly. Well, not surprisingly at all now that I've been, you know, involved with special operations for so long. But wrestling is the core, you know, like guys, probably upwards of 70-80% of guys that are in special operations have some sort of wrestling or, you know,
fighting background
where there's more discipline than just, you know, and nothing to take away from the other sports. They're all highly, you know, disciplined sports as well. But like, you're not just catching or throwing, you're like man and man, you know, physically disciplined and regimented things. So a lot of the guys that I wrestled with back then had come to, you know, when their wrestling career reaches that end, they're like, I can't just be this guy in the Army. You know, I got to go do special operations or something, you know, once you become, because the World Class Athlete program, it, you know, changes, I think, you know, but you have to be ranked, you know, nationally, like 15, 10, 15, you know, somewhere high. It's not like just fucking Joe Schmo off the street can come in and wrestle. So these guys are, you know, generally competitive and high performers, so they fit right in special operations. Yeah,
which makes sense.
The two guys that left before me, it was funny because neither one of them got selected. Yeah. And they both ended up going like CA or SOPs, you know. And then I got selected. And I was like, oh, yeah.
So now, leading up to this point, you, like, what's your, I guess, thoughts on the military, right? You just wrestled for however long.
I just wrestled. Yeah. That's it, bro. Yeah. That was my plan. I was wrestling. Yeah. I got my perishable skill there. Yeah. Right. I'm gonna keep this little certification. Yeah. I'm gonna wrestle until 2004, and then I'm getting out.
So what changed? Like, so how did you go from? Because you went back to Korea to clear. Now you're at a decision point, I would think. Like, what transpired?
Not so much
there?
yet. Not so much yet.
Okay.
So I got sent back to Korea to clear, and then from Korea they're like, once you get to Korea, you'll get your gaining assignment, which we're pushing to get your gaining assignment being Colorado. Yeah. Since your tour overseas is done in Korea, we're trying to get you back to the States. We want you to go to Colorado. However, at this time, now we're talking like, you know, mid 2004, right? Olympic trials are over. And things are happening pretty fast now. So my plan, Carrie and I's plan is at this point, as I leave wrestling, like, hey man, I'll see you guys in 6 months. Yeah. Because it's a 6 month to a year break in between the Olympic year to get back to, you know, camp. Yeah. So I go clear Korea. Carrie and I have full intentions, you know, like we're moving back to Colorado. I get assigned to Fort Hood, Texas. And there's a COSCOM unit there that's getting ready to gear up and be attached to the Big Red One and go into Iraq. Okay. Yeah. So I get assigned to Fort Hood, Texas. Yeah. Still fully planning on, all right, you know, I'm going to do whatever these guys are asking me to do. And then next year, I'm either going to go back to wrestling or I'm going to get out. Yeah. Well, now the stop loss comes in and they're like, you're not getting out for 15, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So Carrie moves down to Texas and we start talking like 3 years probably isn't really going to work. I'm going to get stuck. I'd rather re-enlist for a bonus and do 3 more years than get stuck for 2 or 3 years for free.
Yeah.
So let's make the decision now, and then I'll go back and wrestle. And we'll still go, after I do, once I get to Fort Hood, I'll in-process Fort Hood. I'll re-enlist for my new duty assignment, do new duty station, and then, now I'm an E4. So I get to my new unit and re-enlist for 3 more years.
Okay.
So that takes me to a 6-year, and that just is outside of the 18-month stop losses, I think is what they had on us at that time. So then fully intention, talking back and forth with the wrestling team, continuing to train for wrestling. Everything in my mind, body, and soul was going back to wrestling. Yeah. Then I get put on orders to be attached to the first ID that was going into, Iraq or whatever. So get attached to those, go to Operation Phantom Fury in Fallujah.
Oh yeah.
And the switches in my head turned.
Yeah, everything just changed.
It was completely different.
Now, what timeline were you in Iraq? Was it 04 to what?
It was 04 to 05. Those were 12-month deployments at that time. Okay. Yeah. So we got there man. I have this all written down somewhere. Yeah. We got there somewhere. I know Phantom Fury was, I think, like September, October time frame in 2004. Yeah. And then we returned somewhere around that time the next year. Gotcha. Where right before I left, so also that there are 2 things that changed, right? I would love it to be an all, patriotic and Captain America thing, but also Carrie, we found out Carrie was pregnant. So Blake was born in 2005 in July. Gotcha. So right before I left, that puts, right around that time, like right before I left or, a month or 2 before I left, she gets pregnant. Then I'm deployed. I return for my mid-tour when Blake is born. See Blake be born, my oldest son Blake, and then return back to Iraq. Pretty much around that time, I put in the process for a 4187 into my command. I'd got promoted from specialist to corporal, and then put in a 4187 for airborne and ranger school en route to Fort Bragg. Gotcha. Like it was like, all right, I'm going to. This is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to leave my wrestling behind. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm gonna be a father. And these fucking dudes are wild. These guys are clearing building.
So what happened during that deployment that caused everything to switch? Was it just you being on the ground and seeing what these guys were doing, or was it holy shit, I want to do that? What changed, I guess?
There was so the majority of the people that were there in that area at the time were the Marines. And a guy, Command Sergeant Major Faulkner, or Marine Sergeant Major, was one of the first, if not the first, senior enlisted dude. He got shot right outside of Fallujah. Yeah. And when that happened, seeing the dudes and hearing about the dudes through the different networks, the way that they bond together. Yeah. And then not only what you witnessed, but the stuff that you're talking about at the fire at that night. These dudes are hand-to-hand combat. These guys are fighting with pans over here, and there's still everybody that, we've been through dude, we were born and raised and retired in war. You know what literally. I mean? We're the first generation to ever do that. Yeah. And the stories that you hear from the people that were around, we're surrounded by nothing less than amazing human beings. Yeah. Insane bravery and honor, and sometimes it's just them reacting out of fear. Maybe. I mean, shit, I know I've just reacted out of fear. I didn't think about it. They're like, man, that was really brave. I'm I wasn't.
I'm just trying to save my. I got a baby at home.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about that, man. I was just rolling. You turn that switch off. That same switch that goes, "Why are you crying?" Yeah. That's the same one that's So I seen that for the first time. I'd never witnessed anything like that before, but the closest thing that to me that I could relate that to was the guys that were there, and there was some guys that they said they were 10th group dudes, but later on found out they were unit guys. Yeah. the way that they were, coming in, the way that they would go together. They were just like to themselves in it, like alone, and no one could break that like little cell. You know what I mean? It was just that like, I don't want to be, corny and say camaraderie, but that's exactly like what it was. I was like, that's a team setting that like we have as a wrestling team. When the wrestling team goes somewhere, you go everywhere with the wrestling team or the football team or whatever team. Yeah. And I didn't know that you could experience that outside of sports. And then seeing it to that level and seeing like, man, it wasn't like a reaction. I don't really remember, where I was the day that like the towers fell or, things like that. I was too much of a selfish young kid and preoccupied with my own shit. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like,
I'm being honest about it. Like, it's just, I don't want to. I was never the dude that was like, that Toby Keith song comes on, I get a freedom boner, and I'm like, "Look in America," It was like it was different for me, like. And when I did see it, it wasn't until like even at basic training and AIT and things, like honor graduate at basic training, honor graduate at AIT, high PT, all these like things that were like accolades or achievements. Really, it didn't really like click for me yet. It was just something that I was doing. And then when I was on my first deployment, it like clicked, and I was like, man, there's something way bigger out here that like I'd like to be a part of.
Now, how did the conversation go with Carrie? Hey, I know we had plans, but
ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
In that situation, ignorance is bliss, right? So she didn't know what we were getting into. Yeah. And she just knew that she was very, very supportive, right? So I had my commander at the time when we returned, both my outgoing and incoming commander, both still friends with like both of them today, great dudes. They were like, look, man, because I was a medic, right? So we were attached. And then we came back. Yeah. And he was like, the people you were attached to, the things that, you were able to do and that you were written up, the stories or the storyboards and things that you were a part of, like we see that, that's what we've known you now for a year, like we've seen you, we know that this isn't the unit, like a COSCOM unit being babied out to all these different people, we know that's not you. Like you want to be a part of something bigger. So they were advocates for, they signed my 4187 right away. So which was rare at the time.
Yeah. So we'll back up a little bit. So did you know like where you wanted to go as far as units? Like you knew those dudes were 10th groupers. You knew about the Rangers. So how did you figure out exactly which route you wanted to go down as far as special operations?
I was too prideful really to ask a ton of questions at the time. Like I was just like sitting there. So I really didn't know where I wanted to go. The only thing that I did know is that I needed to get airborne and ranger school because that was like your first steps by talking to all the, infantry guys that were around me and all the guys that I was going to go to selection but didn't do this. And this is before that I knew that was such a common thing. Yeah. Which we see it here. Yeah. At Fort Bragg at the at the mecca of the special operations where everyone here either went to selection or was going to go to selection. Yeah. So at the time I really didn't, but was around a lot of infantry guys that were talking about these things. So what the information that I could gather was like that I needed to be at Fort Bragg and that I needed to go get those, the training on the way, like if I could, because I was a slick sleeve ground asset medic, that with cauliflower, nobody gave a shit that I was, you know what I mean? Like it was a cool story and it kind of got me in some, offices and things, but like it wasn't, like I want to take this guy on a mission when he doesn't have these skills that I need.
Gotcha.
So, the two commanders at the time, both of their families were close. Carrie and I were very young. But I say that we were very young, but we were also like, we had like an older soul about us. Gotcha. We never really got into like going out and running the bars and things like that. So it was easy for us to get in with, like the more mature or senior ranking, like our commanders and things. We were family friends with them. Gotcha. We had a kid now too, so it wasn't like we were normal, like your normal privates are between 18 and 21 years old. Now we were 21 and 22 or 22 and 23 as we were moving on. And we had seen some things and been some places, and we had a kid as well. Gotcha. So we weren't like the normal specialist or the stereotypical specialist that like, we didn't go out and do,
gotcha.
The younger crowd thing. I feel like both of us were kind of homebodies. That's the area that we're from too, like we're just, so we were really close with our commanders and the ingoing and outgoing, and they both stayed in the same unit as the new commander came in because of the way the unit was organized. It was like a headquarters-ish kind of company, right? Yeah. So they're like signing off on it and being able to explain a little bit more what their experience is, because one of them was a officer. He was enlisted first, so he was an infantry guy first, and then he became an officer before his command, and the other guy was had a long story before he became an officer. Like both of them had some time in, and they were able to explain enough for Carrie to give her like, all right, peace of mind. And then Carrie's like, we're in Fort Hood, Texas, and you're telling me we could go to the East Coast away from the ocean? Let's roll. You know what I mean? And then by the time all this like had, from evolution to us leaving, now we had just had our second son and another deployment as well. Yeah. So now Carrie and I think, I'm not sure exactly how old Caden was, but he was young. Yeah. We threw him and all of our kids, all of our stuff in the truck, bought a house online, and rolled. Yeah. And
now, where you move into North Carolina?
Yeah, straight to.
So did you already hit out knockout Ranger School?
I went back. So I brought Carrie and the boys to North Carolina, and then went back to school. I was at Benning,
so you got attached. Well, I guess you got assigned to the 82nd then.
I got assigned to the 82nd, and then from the 82nd, I went to the other schools en route.
I got you.
So, and I actually called on and got Pathfinder too before I left.
Nice. So you knocked out 3 schools.
Yeah. Yeah. So like so now I show up to Fort Bragg, right? Yeah. With very little, I mean, 2 combat deployments, which at that time was very common. But now I have, a combat patch. Yeah. I have, some badges and some flair, and I show up to the 82nd, and I'm a buck sergeant, So, but I was, like green but cocky as hell. You know what I'm saying? Like you're above the world. And the 82nd, like I always tell this to people, like I have a ton of respect, man. That the history and lineage of that unit. And if you talk to a kid that's in the 82nd, they're like, man, this sucks, and this, and this, and this. And I'm like, yeah, dude, some aspects of every fucking job suck. Yeah, oh yeah. Some things of everything suck. And it was in that time that I realized very shortly that I wanted to be a Green Beret. Yeah. But there also doesn't take away from, like, you're an 82nd Airborne Division paratrooper, man. That's something to be freaking insanely proud of. Yeah. I just recently, one of my cousins, her son just got assigned to here. Yeah. And he showed up, man, and I was like, looking at this kid, right? Bro, it's been a long time since, we just don't see young kids like that, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. Even when I was at, the first sergeant at SWIC, I was at the end of the course where, you're already disgruntled and you already got a forearm tattoo in a big truck, So, like, different than the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed dudes that show up at the beginning. Yeah. So, like, just looking at this kid, the first day he got in, I was like, I gotta go pick this dude up, like, I want to talk to him, I want to show him around, show him some cool things, but show him, like, what the importance and the magnitude of what you're doing is, because it's super easy to get lost in going and talking to the common kid at the barracks that's disgruntled because he was in a motor pool for 5 days in a row, or because we're going through the ammo crisis that we are, or the training crisis, or whatever, like everybody right now is like, this beer's too cold, attitude. And it's like, so I picked him up, and just by chance, as I'm driving into Chicken Gate, I see a Chinook cruising over St. Mary dropping dudes. I'm like, drop some. I go and pick him up. I'm like, you ever seen a Chinook? And he's like, he's from the same town I'm from. Yeah. He's like, no. I'm like, let's roll. And then, I had a uniform on for some strange reason that day. Oh, I had a meeting at USOC that day. Yeah. So I had a uniform on, and I was like, all right. I was like, we'll walk up here, you know, and you know, everybody's like, oh shit, you know, because it was an 80-second jump.
Yeah.
So I was like, you want to go on the bird? You know, want to see this stuff? You know, like this is kind of how things work around here. You know, like we could all kind of work together, but you know, usually you can kind of, if you work things right and you pretend like you're supposed to be there. Yeah. You know, you be there. You know.
No one's gonna tell you anything. When they see
right.
That read for that star.
Hey, come here, right? Yeah, they're like, come here. Like, so we walked up, and the dude, like his first day at Fort Bragg, he's on a Chinook. He gets to see a Chinook. You know, gets to see an airborne operation. You know, which is very different from things. But I just like after that, I realized now I need to bring him back down to the earth. And I took him over to our memorial walk, and I parked in the middle of it so that we could walk our memorial walk and then walk over to the USASOC one. And I'm like, listen, man, you're going to hear and be a part of a ton of things that you think are like nonsense. You're going to be annoyed. There's tons and tons and tons of days where you're going to see this dude that's above you. What drove me at that time was like, if I had a leader that was above me, and it seemed like at every level that somewhere, if it wasn't a direct leader, it was another guy. I was like, man, I want to be able to tell that dude to shut the hell up. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, or that was at least a part of the drive. Yeah. I was like, you're going to have that everywhere. I said, and don't get caught into the shit that all these, like a lot of kids, a lot of young men and women that are in the ranks today get caught in, that this outside world's so much better, or this is better, because you have a sense of duty and honor. And like, as you're walking by these stones, or as we walked over the memorial wall, every single one of these dudes, you know, like sacrifice. Yeah. And, you know, like you can sit here and say it was for this big patriotic cause, but it wasn't. It was for the guys next, right and left of them and their families that were at home. And once you get a sense of that, it makes going to the motor pool and kicking tires a little bit better, you know, or a little bit more sustainable. Because now all I got to do is get through the hour and a half of bullshit in the morning where I got to deal with somebody that may or may not be incompetent, that may or may not be a good leader, that may or may not be this. And then I can go to the gym. Yeah. And I get a paycheck. And then I can, you know, I might not go to the range with my unit, but I'm off of work early and I got a steady paycheck. I can go to the range down the road. Yeah. You know, so it is going to be what all you make of it. And at the time when I came to the 82nd, I realized, I really did. I was like, I had seen some different areas of the Army. I'd witnessed like, I was super proud to be in the 82nd. I was like very thankful. I was like in awe of the history and like the people that I was around. Like, and that was a day where, you know, the platoon sergeant and the first sergeant would walk out of their office, you know, both of them are smoking cigarettes, and they'd walk up and they'd flick their cigarette and then they'd fucking take off, bro. And you're like, and then you're trying to keep up with these dudes and you're like, that guy still smells like fucking Red Label and he's sprinting like he's so fast, like where's this coming from? And you're like, it's a mixture of like grit and anger and like there's a lot of things mixed into that, you know, but like it was a good time, man. Yeah. The people that I surrounded myself though, you know, with at that time and were high achievers. They were wanting to go. I got attached to inside the 82nd. Like shortly after I got there, I got attached to a PSD element. Nice. And the captains and the people that were, you know, involved with this, their goal was to go BSF. Yeah. And I was like, well, I mean, that to me, in the way that everybody explained it at the time, was like, yeah, man, this is all awesome. You're going to go and do things because this is now 2007. Yeah. You know, 2008. So, dude, there's plenty of killing to be done, you know, and we were getting ready to go to another Iraq trip.
So now, was that your first exposure, I guess your first initial exposure to SF was from the PSD folks?
No, the first initial exposure was in Fallujah, like seeing dudes around.
Oh, I got you.
And then that trip to Iraq, and the next trip to Iraq was actually
talking about Iraq trip with the 82nd.
The next trip to Iraq from because I ended up doing 2 deployments to Iraq back to back from Fort Hood. Okay. Yeah. In the process of getting stop loss lifted for PCS and changing all that, going up through the COSCOM at Fort Hood was like a nightmare. And at the end of the time, like I had said, we ended up having, you know, like a kid, and I ended up having 2 deployments there. Okay. On the second deployment there, I was in a place called Altiwania and was literally attached to the Polish Special Forces and actual 10th Group at that time.
Oh, nice.
That was my first exposure, and the 18 Delta at the time there was like, he was your dude. He was your poster boy.
Yeah.
Like, cool ass beard, was jacked, you know, like, just a, like, Johnny America, right? And he sold, like, I wanted to be everywhere that dude was and everything. Like, I changed my kit out, you know, like, everything that I could do and absorb from that guy because it just made sense. It's like, man, I'm carrying this crazy ass bag that's got these things in it that I don't, because what you know as a combat medic, you know, and learn in regular medicine is dangerous to the operator medic because he needs things super accessible. He doesn't have a whole platoon cover him or a whole, you know, squad, whatever it is. He doesn't have, like, it's just a different operational mindset. So I was trying to absorb everything from that guy.
And I think it's very important that you hit on that specific, I guess, scenario, because you and I both know, you know, being SF guys, there's some fucking dickbags out there, or there's some jackass SF dudes out there, which is why, like, when I had my team, like, I would beat into the dudes like, hey, like, you're literally a recruiting poster for the regiment. So when you go to Big Army and you're around, you know, conventional units, like, be that guy that, you know, the young, you know, 18 or medic could look at it and be like, holy fuck, I want to be this dude. Because that's what happened to you. Like, you 100%. Saw that Delta and you were like, I want to be like that guy. And here you are 21 years later about to retire as a SF guy. So I say all this to say, like, all the guys in the regiment, you know, the ones that are watching or the ones inspiring to be SF dudes, just when you get to that point, like, be the example so guys could emulate you and want to be like you. You know what I mean? Because we all know those dudes that step on their shit that, you know, shows their ass and they make a fool out of themselves in front of Big Army, and now we're like, holy crap, like, you just discredit, you know, third group or whatever group, you know what I mean? So I think it's pretty cool that you found that dude and that's what led you to SF.
I ran into him.
Oh, you saw him afterwards.
I ran into him actually, and it was funny because I was a battalion operations sergeant major and he was a battalion operations sergeant major.
Oh, that's cool.
And we were leaving like Mike Weimer's change of responsibility when he took USASOC just a couple years ago. And I looked at him, man, and I was like, you know, both of us are 15, 18 years older. Like, we look at each other, you know, and he, like, came over and he was like, bro, Ronnie? I was like, Dave? You know, and we're like, what? Because it had been that long, you know, and, like, we kind of circled the wagon around each other. But, yeah, man, I am with you 100% on that, dude. I'm glad that you, like, encapsulated that comment as well and harped on it, because the same thing, there's a mix of, like, mingling and being stoic to where you're not like an asshole. You're not better than fucking anybody, dude.
Fuck no, dude.
The guy that walks around and it's standoffish when you walk around and you're like, you know, I'm this dude, and you're like, come on, bro, you're a douche. You're not this dude. If you're trying to retain that knowledge, or you don't think that anyone else, like, you're impeding progress for all of our people. Like,
gotcha. I agree.
And that's a big thing, like, that I like to tell all of those guys, whether they're the 82nd, a brand new Green Beret, prior service, whatever, is like, dude, whatever your skill set is, it should instill pride in you that you have a flag on your shoulder and want to be like that dude at that. And it's not like some bullshit that you want your commander to hear, like, you know, be the best or be this. It's literally because someone's watching you. It might be your kids. It might be, you know, these other guys that, you know, want to be. I mean, how many guys, and I feel like this is kind of like a judgment, a measurement tool. If you could go through your time, like, as a team and then as a team sergeant and, you know, like, in those support roles, and look to how many support guys that work directly with you that were like, I have to be a Green Beret now. You know, and, like, at one point in time, we were sister platoons with a Navy SEAL platoon. And when the whole platoon was there, it was like, because we fell under, SOTA Southeastern in this particular deployment was ran by NSW. And usually we run, you know, you guys were actually out at Lightning with 2-6, and we were at McCloskey with the SEAL platoon. And it wasn't great, you know, with the whole platoon there. But then towards the end of the SEAL platoon's rotation, they were getting ready to roll out, and we still had like 4 or 5 months left. And you remember that deployment? We were it's that one actually. We were slaughtering dudes by the masses.
Yeah.
And there was 6 dudes that were SEALs, right?
Yeah.
And I literally still talk to 3 of them. You know, like I just talked to one of them the other day. He's a freaking fighter pilot now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro, save some chicks for the rest of us.
Yeah, I know,
you're
right?
a Navy SEAL and he's a good-looking dude. You know, Trevor. He was a SEAL, you know, and now he's a fighter pilot. And I'm like, come on, bro.
Jeez, man, he's checking all them.
But this dude, he was one of the dudes that was like, I want to be a Green Beret.
Yeah.
This is not what we do as SEALs, because that trip, and that was a unique trip for us. You know, we had our movement, you know, up, down, left, or right was like, they were at that point in time was like, we need you to give us space because we were supposed to be withdrawn.
Yeah.
You remember that was when Obama
closed everything down.
Obama signed in everything, closed things down, cut the infantry, has 0 white space, like all these weird things were going on, and it opened the doors for us.
Yeah.
The bad guys thought they were getting leeway, and they were out running around. Wow, and we're just like, all right. So, but I only say that to say, like, even guys in other units, you know, at some point in time would look at the way that you operate and say, man, I really want to be that.
Yeah.
And if you can get a dude, you know, like,
from another special
operations community to say, like, you know, and the tier 1 dudes, you know, like the tier 1 job, when you go and you apply to be a CAG operator, if it's just for the equipment and, you know, the land and milk and honey, you'll never get there. But if it's for that operational mindset, if it's for that, like, absolute 0 room for mistake mentality, then you're there, you know, like, or whatever your purpose are.
Yeah.
But it's your job as an operator to be there and say, like, this is what, like, when somebody looks at you like, man, that dude doesn't miss a gym day. Yeah. He's like charismatic and can network and talk to other people. He runs these lines of communication here and there. And he may not do something great, but at least I'm going to learn. But I don't want to do that when I get there. Gotcha. You know, like, if you can have the 70-30 or 80-20 mentality where, you know, a majority of the things, because nobody's perfect and nobody's going to do everything right, you know. Gotcha. And a lot of times it's unfortunate, but, like, guys will pick up our bad habits too.
Oh yeah, that's
you'll see a dude, you know, doing dumb shit. You know, like, you know, you can't do that. You're gonna get in trouble. Yeah. Like, we can do that. Yeah. But you're not us, so like, don't do that. I'm sorry, I like told you can do that. You know, like, why you guys let this dude do that?
Yeah. But it's also our job to steer them in the right 100%, direction,
right?
I mean, to make sure that they don't go down that path.
Which is where where I was saying was like your measuring stick, kind of like. Yeah. Or a measuring stick is like, you know, if you have guys that are your support elements or guys that you work with that now after working with you want to do what you do, you know, you can use that as a tool to say, okay, I want to keep doing this or I don't want to keep doing that, right? Depending on what it is, right?
Gotcha. Gotcha.
That is a big thing though, man. Dave was a big, it was a lot of the freedom that he had, to be honest too. It was the whole get together. The biggest part of it was going out on, you know, like, in between missions, bro, he would like, hey, come here, I want to talk to you about this. I want to train on this. I want to set this up. And I was like, where does that mindset, to me as an athlete, was, that's what you need to do, right? And I'd never seen that anywhere else. Like, guys go out on mission, you talk about it at pre-mission and planning a little bit, and you come in, you do the rucksack flop, take a shower, you know, you go and play video games. Yeah. Where this dude was like, he came in for mission, he would clean up, maybe hit the gym, get some chow, and then go back into, hey, when we were out there, this happened. In order to make that better, let's try this. And we were like coming up with new ways and new things. You know, soft med was nowhere where it is today. And the guy was he was innovative. He was aggressive as hell. He was smart. It was just like somebody that you wanted to emulate. Yeah. And that was an open access to, like, and he was cool, you know, like, everybody was like, oh man, you know, there he is, you know, kind of thing. Civilian clothes after the op, you know, cool uniform, had his, you know, gun in his pistol belt kind of shit. Yeah. And it was just, it was cool, you know, like stuff that we all seen, you know, like, and took for granted at some point, but realized, like, everybody was like walking past us in full uniforms and stuff, and they're like, you know, whatever. Yeah. So then, yeah, man, that was kind of like my first actual exposure to it. And then it kind of progressed every time, you know, like, that I was involved with someone, especially all the guys that wanted to be Green Berets
Yeah.
all came from like, solid backgrounds. A lot of them ended up becoming successful members of the regiment that I was in the 82nd with.
Gotcha.
Because we all trained together, like on our deployments. We would go on mission, we'd come back and train, we would talk about things. We'd, and some of them had Ranger backgrounds, some of them were just 82nd guys that, like I was, that just continued to grow up. And I wasn't in the 82nd for very long, man, but I still have a giant 82nd patch, patch and a picture on my fridge, man. I was proud of that time. I'm proud that I was part of that unit.
Yeah.
The lineage and history in that unit, and that's something that I would tell a lot of guys. One of the programs that fell under me is when I was the first sergeant at SWIC was the PIT program, which is guys that like go in and performance integrated training. It's a fairly new, not super new, I was the first sergeant several years ago.
Gotcha.
But it was it's part of the program where guys, you want to like give to those dudes like, hey man, I want you to know that if you're not, this isn't the right fit for you.
Yeah.
Don't force it.
Yeah.
And
it's supposed to be natural. Yeah.
It's going to be natural. You're going to feel some things. You're going to have to go against the grain, like being hungry isn't natural, being hurt isn't natural, being things like this, and figuring out where your comfort zone is. And if you keep pushing, you may be putting yourself in the wrong spot, and then you're in the wrong community instead of being proud of where you're at and being maybe you were just called to be that 11 series dude that fucking kicks ass, and we need great infantrymen.
Yeah,
and we need great cooks, we need great mechanics, we need great everything.
Yeah.
So don't like turn back from whatever you were trying to do. On the same side of, we talk a lot about what makes you successful and soft. I think that because there's such a small amount of guys that are going to get through the pipeline, the program, the pipeline, and really the first couple of years of your team life, because the discipline that needs to travel with you, but also like exploring a little bit of what happens if you don't, because that's the likelihood. So like, that's one big thing that, I constantly, even with having two sons, I've gone back and forth a lot about, do I want them to serve?
Yeah.
Do I want to serve? If you're going to do this, if you're going to do that, how it applied to me, one of the things that I had heard very recently, a guy that you both of us know very well, made it all the way to the top of structure, and he was giving advice to one of his family members, and he was like, don't join. The only thing that I got to show for all my time in is a broken back and broken knees. And I was like, bro, that's some disgruntled, that's a flat out lie.
Yeah.
If that is true, you didn't take pride in what you've done. And bro, the relationships that I've formed, my knees do hurt. Obviously I got a broken neck, my back and shoulders, all of my body does hurt. But what I've taken away from my experience as a soldier could never, the pride in your unit, the pride in your work, the pride in things, there are bad things that have came with it. We both have, we buried too many people together.
Just the transformation that we've gone through as not only soldiers, because from when you join, you go through basic and AIT, you come out a totally different person. Then you go through selection, the Q course, you get to the group, you're a completely different person. And then you go through 15 plus years of group and you're a completely different individual. And then you come out 21 years later and you're a completely different person. Right. So between you and I both, like, we have so much that transpired throughout those times. Even though we're both out on the back end, broken everything. Right. I still wouldn't change anything.
Right. And think about the places that you've been able to see and be exposed to, regardless of, and that's a big thing, when I was deciding to go to selection, that was something that I was looking at, was like, I'm from this very small piece of this world, and you and I have been
everywhere.
Lucky enough, like literally to go everywhere. Yeah. Almost every single continent that we have on this planet, we've been to, and it's like you can't take that for granted. No, but you also, and that's available to you anywhere you go. So like looking at it that way, training up to the selection time, like I was a little bit older than my peers because I joined a little bit later and I'd had kids, and things like that. So I had a different kind of, usually it's, for most people, 4 deployments, to Iraq and 1 to Afghanistan before becoming a Green Beret was common for guys our age, but it's completely rare in different circumstances, right? And that was like one thing that when I said a little bit earlier, there's things that come natural and things that are unnatural to you. You know, the selection process for me was natural.
Yeah,
I didn't have to like. I wanted to become a Green Beret. The guys that I were around, we went into like this training. It was like trained because we were like, all right, well, we're gonna walk to work Monday.
Yeah.
You know, and then we just walk, 20 miles to work or 18 miles to work, and it was fun.
Yeah.
We made it fun.
Yeah.
And it sucked.
Yeah.
It prepared me for selection though.
Yeah.
Once I made my mind up that I wanted to go, I wanted to be a part of this team atmosphere. I wanted to see more of the world in a different view. I wanted to be a part of this community that pushes each other. The only access that I had at that point to SF, which I know is not all rainbows and butterflies now, but at the time was just the examples that I had seen, which were dudes that were in shape, on target, well trained, continuously trained, doing work.
That's awesome.
And I wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And
what we'll do, guys, because we're running out of time, so for part 2, we'll dive right into selection. Then we'll talk about the Q course, third group, and then we'll just let the conversation go wherever it goes. All right. So make sure you guys tune in for part 2, guys. You guys will watch part 1 first, and then following week I'll put part 2 up so you can enjoy the rest of this conversation. Right. Ronnie, I appreciate you being here, and guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Right. I'll see you guys.